Hello?
Hello, Sydney. Did you miss me?
It's the 7th Scream film, and if you want an example of how they were really dumbing it down for the audiences this time, how about the fact that they went from having no numbers to having Roman numerals and then said, what if people don't understand? It's the 7th Scream film. Scream 7! Can that just be the review? Because it kind of sums up how I'm feeling about the whole thing. Well, I'm calling it Scream franchise, time of death, 2026. And I know this has made like a crazy amount of money and some fans are really eating it up. But for me, this is when Scream went from Scream to whimper, because it sucks! It's interesting that a film that sold itself partly on the idea that it was going to burn it all down.
I'm gonna burn it all down.
Is instead not burning anything down, and is instead building a monument and patting itself on the back for existing this long. Okay, I'll start with some good stuff, which might not take very long, but I will say, at the very least of the film's credit, the first act is pretty serviceable. The opening scenes in these movies are often a lot of fun, and that continues here. It's a little bit long, but I was having a blast with it, so it really didn't bother me. It's very tangentially connected to the plot as well, but that's nothing new. A lot of times these opening scenes are just tone setters or to get you kind of back into the Scream world. The theme of this one is nostalgia. The movies often have that kind of meta commentary on the media landscape at the time. And honestly, I actually think that the opening scene does a kind of better job of that than a lot of the scenes later on in the film. So I'll give it credit for its opening. The kills in the film's opening scene are pretty decent, but I think that the rest of the deaths in the movie are rather unremarkable. There are maybe two that stuck out to me as memorable, but I think it was a case that they were good on paper, good creative ideas, but I don't think they were necessarily well executed. Pun intended. One of them, for my money, is the best death in the movie. It comes very early on. I'm not going to say exactly what it is, but the problem with it is that it's so obvious. It's really telegraphed. You know this death is coming. And I had the idea in my head before it actually happened, and it didn't live up to what was in my head. You might say, Tom, that sounds like a you problem, and maybe it is, but honestly, what happened on screen was exactly what I had in my head, but I just felt it was so poorly directed and it took some of the impact, and honestly just after the fact made me go, why was I excited about that death? And that's never a good sign. There's another death in the film that feels like it's actually from a different franchise. It doesn't suit Scream in my opinion. It feels like something from one of the Terrifier movies involving a pointy beer tap. And you might say, okay, well, as a death itself, is it good? Yes, but it's ruined in my opinion by bad visual effects. And considering those are the two best deaths in the film, and I have problems with both of them, that's not a great sign. It wouldn't make my top 10, for example. Which you can find right now on the channel. Neve Campbell is great as always in the role of Sydney, and she gets a lot more focus here than she did in any of the recent entries, and it's a welcome return to the franchise for her. And it's very much built around her character's family dynamic, as the tagline suggests, fear hits home. And I will say, I really enjoyed her husband Mark here, played by Joel McHale. Although rather hilariously, they were hinting that she was married to the cop Mark from Scream 3, played by Patrick Dempsey. But Patrick Dempsey didn't want to come back, so now she's married to another cop, also named Mark. Girl has got a type. The more specific focus of that family dynamic, though, is the relationship between Sydney and her daughter Tatum, who was named for Rose McGowan's character in the original film. And I thought Isabel May gave a fine performance. But I think the problems I have is more with the writing of her character, and honestly the writing as a whole. But I think the angle of generational trauma through the final girl and then the final girl's daughter inheriting that trauma is an interesting approach. That being said, we've already had that idea done, and done pretty well in my opinion, certainly done better in Halloween 2018, and to me it felt like this movie actually kind of copied that movie's homework just a little bit. There though, they covered 3 generations of generational trauma across the Strode family, but Scream isn't that old, but give it time. I predict that by 2036 we'll have Scream focusing on Sydney's granddaughter. Because franchises never die. Remember, they always get back up. You gotta shoot in the head, shoot in the head! You weren't fast enough! And we're gonna get another Scream movie. It's gonna be Scream Forever. Oh god, it's probably gonna be called Scream Forever. In general though, I just felt like their relationship was incredibly shallow. It was like, why won't you tell me about your past, Mom? Because I don't want to talk about my past. You named me after Taylor. Is that how you see me? A victim? I named you after Taylor because she was super cool. We had some real emotional breakthroughs today, didn't we? Nostalgia has clung on to a lot of long-running franchises by now, and Scream always had this self-awareness shtick, and this time the rules and shtick are based around nostalgia. But they say very little on it, because honestly, it feels like they don't have a lot to say, and even they're aware that this is the flimsiest concept they've had to date. And honestly, if the movies want to get rid of that sort of meta movie analysis? They can, because these movies are now coming out so fast that they're running out of things to say, and it really does show. It also isn't very successful, as nostalgia has long been a part of Scream at this point. I mean, we just had our nostalgia trip, complete with member berries and Nev Campbell, in Scream 2022. It wasn't that long ago. Even when she wasn't around and we had Scream 6, there was lots of nostalgic moments and callbacks. The only reason you can give any relevance to nostalgia and the return of Sidney Prescott is because you didn't pay her enough the last time, you cheap f***. Rather frustratingly, it feels like the franchise walked itself into a corner sulking and said, I'm not going to grow anymore. Which is annoying, because I think after the last two films they did a good job of establishing new characters like the core four, and in changing the dynamic to focus on the two sisters of Sam and Tara. And I know not everyone likes those films, I personally do, but at the very least, you could say that they felt like a new approach and something interesting. At the end of Scream 6, I was like, hey, this is actually kind of something different for the franchise. Whereas this feels like the franchise crawling back to what it knows is safe and then throwing its hands in the air and saying, I don't know, man, I'm out of ideas. There is a bit of commentary on AI in the film, and I don't want to go into it too much because I don't want to spoil anything. We do have a character that goes on a brief diatribe about it, but it seems more like a case of the film wanting to have its cake and eat it too. Like, oh, this is bad, but also they must have been clapping their hands together because they realised what they could do story-wise with AI. I just didn't find it especially interesting what they actually did do. The problem with a franchise like this going nostalgic is that there's only so many people they can bring back. By nature of the genre, a lot of the characters end up dead. It's why this sort of big tied-in universe doesn't suit a slasher movie. They've already brought back everybody they can possibly bring back, including the ghost or vision of Billy Loomis. So they have played the hits until we're sick of them. But they want to hit the nostalgia drum. So, without spoiling anything, they have to go to some really silly places. It feels like they scraped out the bottom of the barrel, and what they deliver is ludicrous. And honestly, I thought it was just pathetic and pointless. And maybe they could have done something a bit more nuanced and interesting, like talking about fan theories or expectations. But instead, they just make it clear that they have nothing left to say. I don't have that problem.
I'm gonna burn it all down.
And what I have to imagine is a case of, I brought you into this world so I can take you out of it too. Creator of Scream, Kevin Williamson, is here to co-write and direct this film. Problem is, writing-wise, the script is a mess. Directing-wise, I think it's the worst directed Scream film so far. Sorry about that, Kev. Then we have returns of characters. For example, Courtney Cox as Gail Weathers. Remember, she's now the only character in all the films because last time you wouldn't pay Nev Campbell what she deserves, you cheap prick. Does Courtney Cox have anything to do? Absolutely not. She has no place in the film, and really, if we're honest, should not be in the movie. She just doesn't have a place. It feels like they gave her one moment that didn't need to be her moment, and then that's it. They don't really know what to do with her for the rest of the movie. So what about other returning characters? You should probably make those last two movies feel kind of connected, right? Oh yeah, what about the core four? Oh, we burnt bridges with the two main parts of the core four? Well, bring back the other two. Chad and Mindy are here. And honestly, they have very little to do. They don't even really get the big rule explaining scene because they realise how flimsy the whole thing is. And instead, they have to act the way the plot demands it. They act like total idiots. In the long list of stupid things that happen in this movie, one of the stupidest things is something they're responsible for. You survived 2 Ghostface attacks. How the hell did you think like this? It's so dumb. So forget returns. What about new characters? Surely they can be a saving grace. Honestly, they might have minus characterization. There's not even really a scene to establish half of them before the butchering starts in some of the blandest kills this series has ever done. So speaking of Ghostface, how is the Ghostface reveal? You know, the classic moment in all these films where the mask comes off and the killer or killers is revealed. And yes, it is the worst Ghostface reveal in any of the movies because the motive is so illogical and dumb. And it's such a stretch. And that would be fine if it was a satisfying reveal of who the killer or killers is. But it's not, because you can basically just say, what's the least developed and dumbest thing that happened here? And you'll probably figure out who it is. To be fair, maybe I missed something because my eyes were rolling so far back in my head that I could watch my brain melt at how bad it all was. Maybe I'm being dramatic. No, maybe. I'm being very dramatic. But once upon a time, it felt like Scream had something to say about society and especially entertainment, even if it wasn't a groundbreaking or insightful statement. And if nothing else, it at least felt like an antidote to slasher fatigue instead of a contributing factor to it. This is the worst Scream film in my opinion. And I'm a fan of the franchise. But this just made me want the franchise to go away for a while. Because as I walked out of the cinema, it just felt like my love for the series had been zapped away. And honestly, it actually made me feel apathetic about the state of movies in general, which is quite the accomplishment. I might not know what my favourite scary movie is, but if you were to ask me right now, I might have an idea about what my least favourite is.